everybody. Welcome back to Digital Health Talks. I'm your host, Megan Antonelli, and today I am so excited about the conversation we're going to have. We talk a lot on the show about AI in healthcare, the promise, the hype, the complexity. But today we're getting into something very specific and very real. What happens for patients with a chronic neurological condition like Parkinson's disease in between their doctor's appointments? That gap, which can be weeks or months, is where so much can go wrong and where so little support has historically existed. My guest today is Amy Gordon-Franson, the new CEO of Rune Labs, the company behind StrivePD, a platform that combines FDA-cleared movement analysis with one of the largest real-world Parkinson's datasets out there. And they've just launched something really remarkable, an AI caregiver inside the app that gives patients around-the-clock personalized guidance. Hi, Amy. Welcome to Digital Health Talks.
Megan, thank you so much for having me. I am so excited to be here today and just share more with your listeners about what we're working on and the impact that I have already seen it have and will continue to really just be a joy to watch with for people with Parkinson's and as we expand into other neurodegenerative diseases also.
Yeah, I love the work that you guys are doing. I actually got my start in healthcare, working in the Parkinson's disease lab at Columbia. Sort of an area as a biopsych neuro major, near and dear to my heart. So, excited about your new role at Rune. But tell us a little bit about your background and how you got here.
Yeah, very cool that you worked in the Parkinson's lab. I didn't realize that actually. Small world. So I started my career at McKinsey and then found my way into startups, which I really loved. I built a bunch of my operator instincts at Groupon and then moved out to Oregon and spent time at Nike in their actually kind of in their digital space, working on the Fuel Band and a few other really cool kind of athletic focused wearables. And that took me to a company called Tempus, which was back in my hometown of Chicago. Started at Tempus about 10 years ago when it was a very small company looking to do very ambitious things in the healthcare space. And spent about a decade there growing that company and scaling that company into something that was and is just really important in oncology, especially as a healthcare technology company. And while I was there, my focus was in the clinical trial space. I built that group from the ground up. And what I really learned in oncology clinical trials was just how much room there was to solve really meaningful problems for patients, for clinicians, for health systems, and for pharma. And I think that is true across many indications. While I was at Tempus, I actually found out through 23andMe that I had a genetic predisposition to Parkinson's. And so, being kind of an analytical person, I started to go really deep into what that meant and what I could do about it and what that meant for my family line. And there's really not a lot out there. But this company called Rune kept popping up as something that was really starting to chip away at the problem from a perspective that I really understood, which was aggregating a really large data set to inform all sorts of parts of the ecosystem, to inform care delivery, to inform drug management. So they were, just on my radar. But then as I got more and more interested in that disease specifically and felt like Rune had just this tremendous product market fit and was ready to scale, it just felt like a great opportunity. So I joined the company as an advisor back in the second half of last year, and then joined as CEO in January. So I'm about 100 days in now, and it has just been an incredible privilege to work with an outstanding team with incredible, unique technology, and with a group of existing customers that have really found value in what we're doing.
Yeah. Remind me, when was Rune founded?
Rune was founded about 7 years ago.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
And, I think, we like to talk about TV on Digital Health Talks. And so shrinking has given us, those of us who watch it, a view of kind of the what happens in Harrison Ford's portrayal, and of course having Michael J. Fox on that too, and as part of Gen X, having watched Michael J. Fox's progression with Parkinson's, I think we've got some idea, but certainly not. It's a Hollywood idea. All right. Those who haven't experienced it within their own family. So tell us a little bit about, Rune, in terms of the, problems it is addressing for patients with Parkinson's.
Sure. And okay, I love shrinking, and I'm not fully caught up, and so don't ruin it for me if I say something that changed. But
no
one of the things that Harrison Ford has that not everyone, as you would imagine, have access to is seemingly a neurologist on speed dial and a neurologist that he's dating. Don't ruin it for me if they break up. But to have access, so first of all, to be a doctor yourself and to really have kind of the mindset of what that means. And then to have immediate access to a clinician that really understands drug interactions, understands symptoms, and can be there in the middle of the night. That is a very Hollywood experience of living with a chronic condition. The reality of living with a chronic condition is that at 2 a.m., when you have a symptom that's new to you or worse to you, you have no one to call and no one to look to. And so not only are you experiencing pain and discomfort, you're also wondering, is this normal? Does this mean that the rest of my life is going to be worse? Does this mean I'm not going to make it to the wedding tomorrow or, in 2 weeks? And so the typical path, and this is even somewhat of a privileged path, is to see a neurologist twice a year for 20 minutes. That's it. In that appointment, you're reporting on very subjective feelings of what your disease has done over the last 6 months. It suffers from recency bias, and it suffers from your ability in a high stress environment to just retell how you're feeling. That's what your doctor typically will use to determine what your course of treatment is going forward. And so I think you can, hopefully, and listeners can kind of feel what that would be like. In between those visits is really when you need your help. It's at the moment of feeling off, or the kind of the slow trickle of feeling more rigidity or more tremor or more just kind of, dyskinetic movement. And so I think this is true across disease. The healthcare system was built for episodic care, but chronic disease especially doesn't live episodically. And so, to go back to your question, I think it is such a, Hollywood obviously is portraying the suffering of the disease, but I think it's also it isn't giving credence to some of the pain points of just not knowing if what you're dealing with is normal. And I think that's really where Rune, and specifically our patient-facing app StrivePD, comes in and provides that incredible context, objectivity, and really just a layer of comfort that what you're dealing with is something that is either normal or something that you really should alert your clinician about and go in and get checked out.
Yeah, no. So to paint that picture for us, how does StrivePD work? What is it? Where does it live? How do patients actually use it?
Sure. Okay. So one of the coolest things about StrivePD that really attracted me to Rune is that we use what we call low burden or passive monitoring. So Rune has an FDA-cleared movement analysis that sits on an Apple Watch. And then we also integrate into an iPhone to collect everything that comes in through the health kit. And so your gait, your activity, your sleep, things that you're just collecting anyway by having an iPhone in your purse or in your pocket. Mm-hmm. And so the combination of wearing the Apple Watch and having your phone allows Rune to collect a tremendous amount of biomarker data that is specific to your disease, to Parkinson's disease. And users will interact with our app to enter in medication information and then just kind of an everyday check-in of how you're feeling. Think of it as kind of a gradient of smiley faces.
Mm-hmm.
When you just start collecting that data continuously, you start to get a very longitudinal picture of your disease and then also the cause effect of how you're feeling based on your timing of medication, your dosage of medication, when you work out, when you eat, when you drink water, how you sleep. And all of that data is collected and then fed back to you in the form of daily reports, monthly reports, and then we'll get to this, but also just in the context of being able to ask questions of your data and see answers right away.
Mm-hmm. And so in terms of the gate you mentioned, and there's a FDA movement, cleared movement analysis. Tell us a little bit about how that works and the type of things it's capturing.
Yeah, so it's capturing continuous passive data, specifically your tremor and dyskinesia. So these are two very common symptoms and side effects of people with Parkinson's disease. And they're often very conflating for you because they're both diseases of movement, but they're treated very differently. And so understanding the separation of your tremor from your dyskinesia is something that is much better done with a device than just kind of in your head and self-reported. Because of course, you treat those two symptoms and side effects differently. And so uniquely, StrivePD is able to collect that and then surface that in a way that's really palatable. What you'll also see is how those movements change and interact with your medication, but then also with how you live your daily life, how much exercise, the intensity of your exercise, the amount of protein you're eating in a meal. And so, for someone who is extremely analytical and wants to really understand the cause and effect of these kind of intraday activities, StrivePD is a gold mine for you. But
Right.
also for someone on the other side that really just wants maybe an adult child to understand, sorry, that's a weird way to say it, one of your adult children to be able to look every month at how you're doing and communicate that back to their doctor. StrivePD is also the perfect source for that because it's just doing this in the background.
Right. So for the sort of last 7 years, it's been a patient-facing tool, and
Yes.
you've recently launched the sort of caregiver side of that. So tell us about how that works and kind of what you've seen so far in both kind of adoption and results.
Yeah, so we launched Guardian, which is our AI caregiver inside of StrivePD. Think of it as kind of a coordinated set of agents or a coordinated set of sources that takes Parkinson's specific agents, so medication assistants, symptom experts, and a Parkinson's coach, along with your own data to be able to contextualize any question that you ask of it. And so it is very much not a generic chatbot. You can't go into ChatGPT and get any sort of similar answer that you would get within StrivePD because of both the data that we have on you as an individual, but also the context of data that we have on 20,000 plus others living with Parkinson's. And so putting your quality of sleep in the context of those with Parkinson's gives you a much more relevant answer than putting your context of sleep amongst, a bunch of 20-year-olds that are sleeping 12 hours a night.
Right. Or, 3 people on Reddit.
Exactly. Exactly.
Really the trusted peanut gallery. But yeah, no, that's amazing. And that was actually my question in terms of how many, in terms of the data set, how many have you been tracking over the years? So it's almost 20,000.
Yes.
Or over 20,000. Wow. That's amazing.
Yeah. And you can imagine, like 20,000 over 7 years, growing, but going back 7 years now, we have millions of patient days worth of data now that, stacks up to the largest Parkinson's data set of this kind.
Right. And then have that longitudinal data also on a progressive neurodegenerative disease is huge, right? So, and then in terms of that caregiver, both, you said it's sort of a combination of agents, right? So you've got the different elements of what they need. Is there an element to which it's also, sort of communicating with the caregiver or the actual caregivers, right? So where's the interaction with your clinicians on this?
Yeah, that's probably the most powerful part. So there are two different elements that I'll describe for that. So we have partnerships with health systems, and we have a backlog that we're working through to get implemented, where through integrations into their EMR, we're able to push reports and messages from StrivePD directly to a clinician guided by the patient. So the patient can say, send this to my clinician. And that gives the clinician a tremendous amount of context to better understand why this patient is asking a question of them, what to talk about in the next appointment, and to maybe move up an appointment if there's kind of an urgent change in what they're seeing with the patient. And so that kind of just push communication layer is incredibly helpful for the relationship between patient and clinician. We also have a clinician portal that allows health systems and clinicians to see their patients in aggregate, and then to also just much more quickly triage through higher risk versus lower risk to make sure that they're using their time most effectively, most efficiently, and significantly that they're getting reimbursed for the time that they're actually spending interacting with this patient between visits. I think that's a pain point for health systems and clinicians, is this kind of like, quote, pajama time, to reference another one of my favorite shows, The Pit. All the time spent charting. You see it in these shows like between appointments. It's actually when you're home off the clock and not getting, kind of generally compensated. So you're working these super long hours and then you're charting at home and responding to messages at home. And it is extraordinarily painful and a big source of burnout. And so to be able to have much stronger context, but then also just a better sense of like where urgency is versus where just low risk exists is a bit of a holy grail, especially in chronic care.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, I think the whole picture of that, where the sort of, we have this fear of wearables and the kind of the amount of data that it will collect and how that will become burdensome to the clinicians and the clinicians. But we've gotten to this sort of promise of the agents in AI to be able to, sort of find the signal for the noise through the noise and give the clinicians what they need, give the patients what they need, and in some cases give them some answers. But then you also have the side of that where it's about kind of the trust of that and the question. So tell us a little bit about, where you guys have looked at, being able to put in those guardrails, making sure that the patient is getting good advice, the best advice possible. And that clinician, sort of oversight is also part of it.
Sure. I think you said something really important. So, to put my words against it, I think, our role is never to replace that important clinician relationship. It's to amplify it. It's so that patients can arrive ready with context, with questions, so that they can use Guardian as their first line of defense to look for answers, to ask questions, so that you're not burdening with more data. You're actually feeling as a patient more empowered and reducing the amount of back and forth with your clinician, who just isn't always available the way that this Guardian feature is. When it comes to trust and safety, we very much thought through the guardrails that have to be put in place to make this a good experience and the right experience. And so, first of all, our responses are always framed at this is worth discussing with your care team. We are not the doctor, bring this up with your care team. Our agents work within this bounded action space. So there are very hard limits on what they can and cannot say. We've actually had this feature in an internal beta for about 6 months. And then we had it in a small 500 patient beta for another few months, where we were focused very, very clearly on trust and safety. And we tested kind of every dimension of where the language could be interpreted as medical advice. And we're very confident that we have cleared that hurdle.
Mm-hmm. Right. In terms of the connection, so you're working with health systems to have them use the tool and sort of embed it in their care processes. If a patient comes and isn't coming through the health system, but has it, does it then get connected to their clinician or not always?
Not always. I mean, the beauty of a patient going directly to a health system is that's often how health systems find us when we haven't found them yet. And so we'll get kind of groundswell demand to put an integration in place so that it's a more efficient and easier path of communication between StrivePD and clinician. But we also have a feature that allows the patient to download a report to an email, and then the patient can email directly to their clinician, or they can attach it to MyChart themselves. And so the workaround is actually pretty elegant. A lot of our patients will print out the report and bring it with them to their appointment. And that's also a great way, especially in kind of the population of folks with Parkinson's. That is a very acceptable and very high quality way to still interact with your clinician.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think what's so great about it is, as with much of the tools that we want to bring into this care process to improve patient care, it's not about replacing the 20-minute visits. It's about making them better, right? And Absolutely. and making it more efficient and more productive. And then it sounds like a little bit with Guardian, to give them that ability to get some answers, to alleviate some fears, sort of confirmation of maybe concerns or what have you, in between those visits, right? And then to know when to contact the clinician when they need to, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. So in terms of the data, right? I mean, that's 7 years, 20,000 people. I mean, that's incredibly powerful. Where are you? And I know you're involved with some clinical trials with pharma. Tell us a little bit about kind of what that world of the real world patient data looks like and what's coming out of it. What are you seeing?
Yeah, I mean, this is where it gets really exciting, because everything that I've described that really impacts the patient, the clinician, is just a better understanding of your data. But I think that, where we at Rune really are headed is that we're building this, I'm going to call it a data flywheel, but the more data that we're putting into the data set, the more we're able to work with pharma companies to leverage that kind of broad de-identified data set to improve their drug development and their clinical development. And so what I mean by that is, right now, there are some great drugs on the market that patients can benefit from that are very focused on symptom management. And that's a really important part of chronic care, is, managing symptoms effectively and reducing the side effects with those medications. I think all of us in the space, and I'm sure you feel this way too, are very excited about moving closer to disease modification. And so how do you start to develop wisely drugs that are getting outside of just managing the disease, but actually stopping or reversing the disease? And I firmly believe that to do that right and to do that well, you need to see very large, very well curated multimodal data sets so that you know exactly kind of where to aim and where to target those drugs. And so as our population gets bigger, as our relationships with pharma, with the FDA gets stronger, I feel really good about our ability to chip away at some of that, really impactful drug development. In addition to some of that earlier stage work, we are very actively working with many pharma companies on their active clinical trial pipeline. So helping them find the right patients for their trials, educate patients on trial information and also commercial drug information, but then also being used as a monitoring device for patients on trials, so that companies can have a much more granular, much more objective understanding of the minute-by-minute actions of patients that are on trial.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so there's an education component to the tool as well, in addition to sort of the data collection and interaction and caregiver element as
exactly.
Too. So that's great. Yeah, and I think as we look at, goes back, it's all about the data and just the incredible value that is there, both for the patient, the clinician, and then, for the broader research and development space of this, that's really the promise that we've all hoped to have, right?
Exactly.
I imagine, much with, as the guardrails needed for AI with pharma and with the FDA, there's also, a lot of the regulations and the policy around that. And of course, you've had experience with Tempus as well. What is, as you're looking to kind of bring forward the digital health apps and that, what are you seeing from a policy perspective that is maybe promising, concerning, all of the above?
Sure.
Or none of the above.
Yeah. I think that is, it's a big topic that deserves a lot of time and a lot of kind of different experts in the room. I think what I really want policymakers to understand, and what I do think that there's, developing a stronger understanding of, is that data access and data sharing are good for patients. I think the risk is less about sharing, and it's more about sharing without accountability or context. When patients sign up for Guardian or for Strive, we have a very kind of clear consent process. And patients should be very eyes wide open about the benefit that they're getting from that. But then also just, a feeling of safety and certainty that we've built a tremendous amount of infrastructure around our security. I guess all in all, I really believe that the value of a large, well-governed data set outweighs the risk as long as the governance is real on that data.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I think that's incredibly important. And it's this sort of double-edged sword that we've been grappling with in healthcare, which is that without the sharing, without, putting everything into a large data set, we can't get the results. We can't see the promise of the ability to kind of take, the knowledge that will come from it. So 100%.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. One of like the really interesting, we work on a lot of algorithms. We have a lot of, tremendously good data scientists and neuroscientists on the team. And then, pairing them with, what we're able to do now with AI, we're able to find these just really kind of multifactorial algorithms in the context of Parkinson's patients. And so this de-identified data set that we've been able to cultivate over 7 years now, not only is it something that benefits, drug companies as they think about where to develop next and what to develop next, it also is very much feeding directly back to patients right now. As an example, we have a fall risk algorithm. And that fall risk algorithm is built on and based on a Parkinson's population. And so, it isn't 3 people on Reddit. It's based on people whose gait and many other things are understood by us in the context of neurodegenerative disease and in the context of what it's like to live with Parkinson's. And so, we're able to have a just uniquely well fit algorithm that feeds back to the patient, to the caregiver, that just is much more sensitive and specific than it would be if it was, on a broad population. Even if that population is over 55, this is just much more meaningful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's what's so critical about this. What I love about Rune is that we're talking about AI applications and wearables, and it really is impacting the patient's experience and their power to kind of manage and engage with, their disease, and give them the tools and knowledge to better engage with their clinicians on how to kind of improve their life, right? And that's sort of what we're all here to do, pajama time aside, and it's an important piece of that. But that purpose of really hitting all of it, both the research, development, and the patient, sort of care and lifestyle, and improving that, it's an exciting thing to see. So in our last few minutes, because we always ask this question and kind of our five touch back to our five good things in terms of just the broader healthcare digital health space. You've worked in, many aspects of it, from the wearables, sort of health and fitness at Nike to Tempus and oncology and breast cancer, and now with Parkinson's. As you're looking at the general landscape, what's out there that is, sort of you're most excited about, that, that you're most excited about?
Yeah. I mean, overall, over the last 10, 11 years that I've been in healthcare, I have noticed a trend of patients taking a more active role managing their disease. In the last 6 months, with AI, with just more ability to use your own natural language, I have seen this explode. And even in the population that we're really focused on, of 55 and over, seeing patients just really get a deeper understanding and take a much more active role themselves is amazing to see. And I think that is really important as we continue developing digital health tools, that we are not leaving the actual patient to the side. I think that StrivePD and Rune have done an incredible job developing something for the patient. And I think that shows in all of the different aspects that we do. But I'm just so thrilled to see that trend exploding right now. And I think that it is probably the most important thing I see in healthcare. And I want to make sure that, we as a company are on the right side of, riding that wave and giving them, as patients, everything that they need to be as proactive as they can be.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think being able to give people the information and the tools that they need to manage their care better is so critical to all of this. And it touches on equity and access and just the importance of that. I mean, it's very hard, as you said, the time between, just to get a neurologist, is very challenging. So what Rune is doing, it can't be understated how important that is, to put that in the patient. So thanks so much for all the work that you do. Thanks for joining us. It's been so great to talk to you and to learn about it. Tell our audience the best way to sort of get in touch and kind of follow up and learn more.
Yeah, great. Thank you so much for having me. My best way to get in touch is through email. You can reach me at Amy, AMY, at runelabs.io, RUNELABS.io. And you can also find me on LinkedIn, Amy Gordon Franzen on LinkedIn. But this has been wonderful. I really look forward to talking to a lot of you after this and sharing more about where I see this going and hearing your thoughts as well.
Yeah, so great to have this conversation, Amy. Thanks so much for joining us. We'll have to have you back at a Health Impact in person sometime soon.
That.
Maybe we'll come up to Chicago soon, or we'll see you there in San Francisco. But thank you for really bringing, kind of the vision and the reality of what it takes to deliver on the promise of this technology for patients. And, as I said, we're excited about what Rune Labs is building with StrivePD. And it feels like a genuine shift between kind of continuous personalized neurological care and what that can look like. Thanks to our listeners, as always, who work in the health systems and policy and technology for kind of listening and championing all of this for us. Listening, we'll have links to Rune Labs and StrivePD in the show notes. And if you're enjoying Digital Health Talks, please subscribe and leave a review. This is Megan Antonelli signing off. We'll see you next time.